Welcome to Design System London number 11. Let's see, who am I shouting at you to start with? First of all, who has been at Design System London before? Woo! Brilliant. Love returning customers. Who's first time then? Is that the rest of you? Yeah. Nice. Yeah, you know I'm clever, not just a pretty face. There you go. Could work that out. Thank you. So thank you so much. It's amazing to see so many new faces, and it's really nice to see people returning. I'm going to do like a really sort of side one now. Who has been to the online events in the past? We do have a few of those as well. Check that out. Anyone here ever went to the conference? One or the other conference? And a few of those as well. Wow, love that. That means we have people who have been with us on this whole long journey and experience. So that is fantastic to see. So my name is Luis. I'm head of product design at YLD. And for those of you who've been before, you obviously see me shouting at you previously, telling you to move to the front, etc. We are here to talk about Design System. So Design System London, our goal is ultimately to gather bright people like yourself to talk about Design System, share experiences. We want to build something that allows a community that allows people to share those experiences, whether you are new or whether you are a very seasoned speaker. So if you're sitting in this room today and throughout this evening you go, do you know what? I have a story I want to tell, but I've never been on stage before, but I would love to give it a go. You have come to the right place. Just come and join us, talk to anyone in a YLD t-shirt, and maybe you could be the next person presenting at DSL. So, we are very proud to say that we have people from all across the globe. So if you know people from abroad that's coming, well, why not tell them? It's fun. Today's agenda, doors are already open, you've already nibbled, and you've already been drinking. So that's fantastic. So we got that out of the way. We are sort of halfway through the welcome and intros. That's also known as me rambling. And after that, we're going to move into the more serious part of things, which is where we're going to have a senior panel today talking about a couple of specific topics. So I want to just say, we're trying something new on this DSL today. So I hope you bear with us. I think it's going to be awesome. The people on the panel are fantastic. And the topic we're talking about today is product's role in Design System. I'm going to come back to that later, but very excited about this. We'll have a break, go out and see if there's any food left, continue drinking those drinks, chatting a bit more, making some more friends, and then we come back in for our two fantastic experts talks. Systemizing Delight, which is a very delightful talk. It's not just a name, it's also a talk. It's very good, so I'm excited for that one. And the other one, which is, I did not sign up for this. And when we get to that point, there's going to be a lot of people here probably going to say to yourself, do you know what? That's how I feel when I think about Design System and the work that I do with that. I did not sign up for this. So there's going to be something for everyone in there as well. And then we wrap up, again, going back out there for some more networking nibbles and drinks. And by that time, you're probably all very familiar and friendly with each other and be exchanging LinkedIn and how you're going to work together in the future. So yeah, can't wait. It's going to be amazing. A full evening of Design Systems, basically. A couple of quick logistics, as always. So I'm going to start with the code of conduct. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, just be nice to each other. Don't share anything inappropriate. And keep your language clean. I'm going to try to do that myself as well. That includes me as well. If you want to follow us, and of course you do, you can find us on LinkedIn under @Design System London. We have our community. We moved over there now. If you want to talk about us, and why wouldn't you? You know, use hashtag DSL and my favorite hashtag Design System London, because it's nice and short and very memorable. And then obviously Design System. So if you're taking pictures, which you should do, if you're sharing insights, which I hope you get plenty to do, then tag it so everyone else can see it. And that way we can get the community growing. A lot of things to remember. How do I remember that? Well, you use this amazing barcode that we have created. One barcode for everything. So try this and see if it, please, let's hope it works. This is always the moment when I realize sometimes it doesn't. But on this, you should be able to find your link to ask panelist questions. All the stuff that I said about following us, finding a form or how to become a speaker for DSL, or maybe even you want to sponsor a host event as well, that's all in there. And if you are looking at all the YLD openings, you have opened the right QR code. All of it is in there, so just take a look at that. The QR code is available throughout the presentation. I say confidently, yes it is, it's right up there. But before we get to that point, there are two organizations, teams that we need to thank, and that's our sponsors. So the first sponsor we want to thank is YLD, and then we're going to thank Sainsbury's. So before I continue, I want to welcome, my eyes are looking across the room as I want to welcome Jessica from YLD. There she is. I'm like, where am I looking? Jessica, please come on stage.
For those of you that don't know us, YLD are a software engineering, product design, data science and AI consultancy. We've been going for about 11 years now, and we work across a number of industries on a range of problems. So some of those industries include media and publishing, financial services and green energy, to name a few. And our clients come to us with a range of different problems. So that could be a startup with an idea on a post-it note that we help to make into a POC, or it could be a big corporate who's facing lots of friction and needs some help unblocking some stuff. Stuff is a technical term. So yeah, range of scales, range of specialisms. But of course, particularly what you're interested in is product design. And in product design, we work across research, UX, UI, product strategy, and of course, design systems. And that includes building design systems from scratch to improving existing design systems that are in place. Our expertise covers foundations, it covers documentation, accessibility, component creation, and of course knowledge sharing. Hopefully you can tell by, I guess, the event and everything, we're very passionate about sharing knowledge and expertise. Currently we are working with 3 partners who are on design systems journeys. And like I was saying, the beauty of the community is we're all together and we can all talk about our shared pains and things and frictions and what's doing our head in. So please do come and find us or anyone else in the break. We've got YLD t-shirts on if you want to talk about what's bothering you, what's kind of really getting down about your design system. Please come find us. We'd love to talk about it. That's exactly why we're here. So have a lovely evening. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you very much for that, Jessica. Now let's welcome on stage from Sainsbury's. So obviously you all realise that we're in this Sainsbury's building or space, so we want to thank them so much for providing that. I'm looking for, again, I'm scanning. There we are, Francis. I'm terrible at scanning. Please, come on stage.
I'm Francis. I'm the Experience Design Manager in the Design System team at Sainsbury's. Welcome to Sainsbury's HQ. And I wanted to start by saying a big thank you to YLD for letting us host Design Systems London. Very exciting. We've got some amazing talks and a panel coming up, but before we get started, we wanted to give you a quick intro to Sainsbury's, what we're all about and what design systems mean to us. So Sainsbury's is a household name. I'm sure you've all had contact with Sainsbury's, be it going in for a meal deal or if you're doing a big shop. But Sainsbury's actually houses several brands. So groceries is at the heart of what we do. But we also look after Argos, who is our digital store that's famous for convenience, lots of choice and great value. We also have Nectar, including Nectar Prices and our marketing platform Nectar 360, which powers our loyalty program. Habitat, our homeware and furniture brand, and Tu, Sainsbury's fashion line, both have online experiences through e-commerce on the Habitat Tu and Argos websites. And Smart Charge, our new electric vehicle charging business, gives drivers access to charging points at Sainsbury's stores. And having such a broad and diverse business presents unique challenges in both product and design systems. And our strategy breaks down into 4 pillars. So being the UK's first choice for food, loyalty everybody loves, powered by Nectar, more Argos more often, and save and invest to win. And these are at the heart of all the decisions we make at Sainsbury's, including in the tech division. But they're especially influential when putting together a design system. Which brings me to a very quick intro to our design system, Fable. We are at DSL, so we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about design systems a little bit. You might have previously heard of Luna at Sainsbury's, and Fable is its latest incarnation. So Fable is a multi-brand, multi-platform, multi-density design system that spans across 7 brands, and that includes web, app, in-store screens, data platforms, and colleague tools. So in Fable, we will design and build a component once, and using tokens and variables, theme it for different contexts. So as you can see here, you can take a simple component and you can theme it to every brand that we have under our umbrella. So this could be changing brands, but it could also be themes, density, or flipping between light and dark mode. And this gives us the power to deliver amazing efficiency, but also maintaining consistency across all our experiences. And everything in Fable is built with accessibility and performance from the very beginning, meaning adopting it makes our products faster, more inclusive, and with a rapid speed to market. So supporting different platforms and densities means that one set of foundations can deliver components for mobile apps, in-store screens, or scanning handsets. And combined with the power of multi-brand theming, everything from a Sainsbury's self-checkout to the Argos app to a data product for Nectar are all working from the same design system. So this is all while preserving the expression of each brand and the nuances of each platform. So yeah, that's our whistle-stop tour of Fable. If you want to find out a bit more, you can use this QR code and it will take you to designsystems.sainsbury's, and you can visit our Figma community page, our storybook, or read a bit more about our guidance and documentation. The Fable team are also all here. They're waving at you. We'll be the people with orange lanyards rather than visitor lanyards. And you can grab a sticker from us as well. The stickers are in limited supply, so you know, they're pretty rare. So, and also, if you like what you've heard, we are hiring. So visit sainsbury's.jobs if you want to apply for any tech positions. And yeah, please grab one of us after for a chat. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Okay, fantastic. So we are going to move on to the panel. So for the panel, let me see, I should change this. There we go. So we're going to have a panel, and for the panel, I'm going to invite these people. So if I could please ask Benny, John, and Reshma to take the stage here with me. So by the magic of technology, our mics should just automatically work. Let's see how that goes. Oh, yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining me, and welcome everybody to the panel. As I said, this is the first time we try to do a panel. Normally we have a Q&A at the end, but you know, sometimes you got to switch it up a little bit. So before I get these guys to introduce, I just want to give a little bit of context on why we decided to do this and why we're having a panel and sort of having more of a senior panel discussion. For a while, so I have worked with design systems for quite a while through YLD and as a consultant, and met many different organizations and many different companies. And one thing that I've sort of really noticed is that I think that it's a fantastic how design system has been such a fantastic bridge between engineering and design. So on that note, how many people in here would consider themselves design people? Hands showing by hands. It's quite a lot of design people. Love that. How many people would consider themselves engineering people? You would have thought that is the other half. That's very true. You can be both. I love that even more. So how many people in here would consider themselves product people, such as product owners? Love that. So when I say product, before you get too excited, I'm talking about business analysis, product owners, product managers, that kind of leading the product. So can we get those hands up again so we see how many they are? There are a few, and a few kind of like maybe a little bit, but yeah. So the reason I ask this is because I think that engineering and design has got a great connection through design system. But I think for me, there is the third part missing, which is product. Because when we talk about success of design systems, we kind of have design working with engineering, producing something, and then saying to product, please make sure this happens. And sometimes I think it's on us as designers and engineers to ensure that we invite them to the conversation. It's a very long introduction saying, and that's what we want to talk about today. So I basically invited these lovely people to sit down and talk about this with me. So I want to, let's start by you guys introducing yourself. Let's start from you, Benny.
Hi everyone. Is my mic working? Because I can't tell. I'm assuming it does. Cheers. No? I had both a no and a yes. So yeah, I'm Benny. Currently I am Director of Product Design at Pearson Education. I've also had a love-hate relationship with design systems for many, many years. From like building one myself, which is where both my design, engineering and product hand raise comes from, because I ended up having to do all three roles, because it was 2017. We were just starting with those things. I swore that I would never, ever, ever work on a design system again. And now I'm working on another one. So yeah, I'll pass to...
Hello, I'm Reshma. I'm the product manager for design systems at Sainsbury's. So I was in design discipline a while ago, and I've made it to the dark side. So now I'm the product manager here. So yeah, hello.
My name's John Reedy. I'm the director of our design system at T. Rowe Price. It's an American business, but we've got a base in the UK. I look after product design, and I'm also very involved in tech as well.
Brilliant. Okay, great. And I've already introduced my connection with design system. So today we are obviously not going to be able to cover everything, because you know when you set something like this up, you're very ambitious. But the couple of key areas that we have discussed previously that we want to talk about is bridging the gap, product management and design system integration, making the business case, measuring the value of design systems, which I know everyone's very keen on, and then organizational buy-in, embedding design system at scale. So let's start with kind of the product management design system integration. And I'm just going to throw a question out there straight away. And, the product people, don't get too upset when I say this. Why do product teams struggle to fully understand design system dependencies? Just going to right out there. I'm going to look at you first, Reshma, because as being the product representative here, what's your experience with this so far?
I think sometimes design systems can come across a bit too technical. It is a product, after all, mainly catering towards designers and developers. So while it kind of is related to product people in terms of how it helps them with the speed to market side of things, it can feel a little further removed. So while they have so many things to kind of like think about, this may be one step further back in terms of things they care about, in order at the forefront of their mind. So it's not something that they are actively invested in trying to learn and understand about.
Fair. I'm going to come back to that, but prioritizing where they sit. So as someone who kind of worked a little bit across all of this, how do you sort of see that whole product understanding?
I think the main issue is that from the product perspective, more often than not, design systems are a dependency, not an enabler, which is the same thing, but it's two sides of the same coin, right? And as a dependency, it becomes something that they need to rely on for the success of their own roadmap, but they don't have control over. Also, even scarier, usually there isn't a product person in most design system team. Obviously, they're lucky here in Sainsbury's, but most other places they're not. So product doesn't even have a counterpart that they can speak the same language with and get reassurance over the roadmap. So to them, it can often look like there's a bunch of children doing a thing that they then have to like count on.
Excellent. So just to clarify, so what we want to talk about now, which is absolutely what you're hinting towards, is that product needs to be part of it. It's not necessarily about running your design system as a product. That's a different conversation that I also know you're all interested in. But yeah, so on that, John, please, what would you sort of add to that?
Yeah, I would say it's really interesting. I remember thinking a few months ago, I remember seeing a status sheet, a product owner status sheet, and it said dependency/risk. And there was design system. And I thought, that's always the same, that's like the same item.
The whole thing.
Dependency/risk is like a baked in, if it's a dependency, it's a risk. And I thought, wow, that's a really that's really key, isn't it? Anything that, and often I think in the world of Agile as well, it's like everything outside of our group is risky. We've got a team, we've got this really close-knit team, and if we now depend on these other complex systems, like you said, it puts everything at risk. And I love the kind of child-parent analogy. I think I was using that with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when it feels like, and I kind of run product for our design system, but sometimes product is like the grown-ups, and designers and devs feel like the kind of kids. Like they're doing all the cool stuff, and I think the parent-to-parent relationship between product owners is key, and we find it key as well.
So how do we then make that communication better? How do we kind of feel like product doesn't feel like it's a risk that they need to mitigate, or how do we actually invite product to be part of the conversation? You're talking, Rashma, hinting towards like it's too technical. What can we do as designers and engineers to ensure that they don't feel like that?
I think part of it is just kind of explaining the value of design systems in really simple terms that product people care about. So speed to market is what every product person cares about. It's like, can I get my stuff out faster with this? Oh, great, I want this. And also explaining it in terms of cost of delay as well. So if your feature was to go out 3 months later because you're not using design systems versus next month, that makes a big difference. That's how much more. So you're kind of connecting it more in terms of the revenues, basically bottom line revenue, but from all the metrics that they would normally care about. That usually helps quite a lot. But also the element of like, when do we get them involved? Being a product manager, it helps to go into product forums where roadmaps are being discussed and being able to say, oh, you're working on so-and-so experience, you'll need us for this part. Having that in very early on, so they factor that in, that helps. And then that gives us a bit of a heads up in terms of if a certain team is picking up a piece of work, what can we anticipate and how can we get ahead of the curve so they can actually go ahead and do it and everything is available. Still doesn't mitigate all of the issues. There will still be certain things, but I think that could be a good start point.
Excellent. So from your experience, kind of having been across the bill, is there anything, taking into consideration what Rashma just said, is there anything there that you would say, I wish I had done that in my past, or I would do things differently?
100%, but also there's an important component here in which I think that fundamentally at the end of the day you can educate product as much as possible, but having empathy for these poor product people, which I have a lot of because they are ultimately accountable for the success or the failure of the product. Like even when we speak about product trios, and that's engineering, design, and product, in reality product is the one with the real ultimate accountability, so it's completely understandable that they will be very nervous about dependencies, especially dependencies that they don't understand very well. I have used, I'm not going to say wasted, a lot of time trying to explain to them directly why this is great, but what I found is that at the end of the day they might even believe me, but they don't know how to justify then with their own superior, the people that they are accountable to, that they've had a delay because of a design system or that they are dependent on this thing. So what I tend to do now, which I should have done a lot more in the past, is getting leadership buy-in.
Yeah.
Because if product leadership and engineering leadership buys into the importance of a design system, then it becomes okay. It becomes something that like everyone is aware of. It's out in the open. It's not a little secret that we're trying to make work. And then all of my product manager and product owners know that this is something that they have to use. They're encouraged to use, and everything is a lot more relaxed.
That's what we're going to get to, relaxed, whatever feels part of it. John?
Yeah, I think trust is a major factor, and I was thinking a lot of it's to do with how established your design system is within the community or within the business, because you could be at the beginning where you're really pushing, you're trying to get people to use it. You've got a small library, you're trying to get people to use it. But then you will get to a point of establishment when it's really strange not to use it. So product owners will feel really strange about not using the design system. So then they'll be asking you about, hey, we need to do this thing. Why isn't it in the design system? Or when is it part of the design system? And then your relationship completely changes. But I would say for everyone, it's trust. It's putting it in the hands of and if a product owner is going to trust they're going to trust their designers, they're going to trust their developers. And if they can use a component and they can see it working, and they start to trust that you will deliver on time, especially if they're really dependent on something like a trajectory of a component being live by a certain time that they need it, that's really when the trust happens, because they can't see it finished before they start. But I think it's building that trust and that brand.
So building that trust, I agree. I think that's very important. But I want to go back to sort of like when we introduce product. I think somebody mentioned that here, and I think that to me, I think is really key, because I think what often happens is that we can do all of this thing. We can build a trust. We can try to convince them why things are good, but I can't help feeling that we're not introducing them to the process early enough. By the time we do this, the design system already exists. It's already been signed off by business. It's already in flight. But how can we kind of make sure that rather than us trying to convince product, actually product is part of that conversation to when business agrees to design system? Because we all know that, that elusive business, someone is business leadership, like when they agree to it. Are we not having enough conversation with product already at that point?
Well, I have an opinion on that.
Go for it. That's why we're here.
Which is something that you might agree with because you lived it through with me. We're collaborating on a design system now for Pearson. And as you remember, we've really tried to integrate with everyone on day one. We had demos every other week, even of the scraps, and we were inviting product, we were inviting engineering leadership. I was advertising this to absolutely everyone, and I had actually managed to convince a few people who helped me put together the business case and then put budget towards it. So there was an intention of real collaboration from product from early on, and it was beautiful. And when it came to actual implementation and the part where they now need it for their own roadmap, they still freaked out because it's just what happens. So I believe it is important. It's incredibly important, but it's still one of the pieces. You still need the whole. You still need the leadership buy-in, and yeah.
So building on the leadership buying, we were talking about making the business case and kind of how can we go. So kind of what I'm hearing is that we have made a good effort of getting business on board of the buy-in, but in that buy-in process, we kind of forgot about products. Like I put my hands up and I say, I've seen this. I've seen where very few design systems from my experience, and some people might have other experience, they're either initiated by design or by engineering. And so far, I haven't come across a single design system which is initiated by product. So how do we change that conversation with business? Or how do we kind of like get that business case going that makes it important for product people? As you say, like product people, they care about the deliveries. They care about the business. How do we get them to see that this is supposed to support them?
I think depending on the level of your stakeholder you're talking to, they may care about different aspects. So if you're talking about really senior leadership who are sponsoring the team, so to say, you are talking very monetary aspects. So you're trying to kind of figure out how do you kind of show them the return on investment on the team. And that's something that at Sainsbury's we've kind of calculated the value of a component. Based on like if you were to design a component from scratch, how much would it cost versus like if you were to use design system one, what would cost. And that's kind of like, okay, for every experience you build, you're using these many components, this is how much it is going to be saving the company, because it's already, the bigger the adoption, the more return on investment, and that kind of pushes it further. Then there is this other side, which is like your immediate stakeholders who are the folks working on the ground. So this is where the product manager. And again, going back to that point around like faster. It's going to make things faster for you guys. And the cost of ownership is also not on you. There is design systems is actually maintaining it. So tomorrow you don't have to find out like a new accessibility bug in production. these things, just kind of laying out some of these in explicit terms of like, okay, if your bugs, accessibility is taken care of, responsiveness is taken care of, that aspect also helps them, because it's like, oh, one less thing I need to worry about.
Absolutely. So I think when we spoke, you mentioned something about measuring as well. Like, how have you guys kind of seen measuring the value and showcasing that?
Yeah, so we really concentrate, I think, on first, like you said, monetary is a big one from a business point of view. And I honestly think most businesses will fund design systems, and the number one cause is because they want it to create efficiency, and they want it to save on design and development hours, because they see the same thing getting repeated over and over again. I think what we try and do is exactly the same thing. We costed up how much does it cost us to make, just in really explicit terms, small, medium and large and extra large components. And we kind of use the word component because people understand component, even if it's kind of utility classes and other abstract behaviors. We measured how much it would cost us to make as a business, as a design system team. And then we worked with each of the teams to do surveys. We started out with lots of research to find out, well, how much does it cost another team to make? And we figured out, look, in basic terms, if they used all the features over a period of time, let's say it costs us the same amount of time. So let's say it costs us 10K to make a component. If you use that component 10 times, then that's £1 million pounds. And then you take away the number and you figure out how much you do. But I think from a product management point of view, obviously when you're talking to leadership, they like these big numbers because they can see the big picture. But when you're talking to an individual product owner about his or her project, they're not going to care about the big numbers. But what we did is we kind of flipped it and said, well, this is how much money, here's the metrics for you, this is how much you're saving the business by using the design system. Then often our product owners will take these metrics, they'll put them as part of their OKRs, and then they'll play it back to their bosses and say, hey, look, I've saved this much by collaborating with the design system team. And I felt that was a big flip as well.
And I think you also had an idea about how measuring that we also discussed.
Yeah, no, we did. What's interesting to me is that, like, in both my big design system experiences, I've tried the measuring thing and it didn't actually work. So this is anecdotal, because I think that your methods are the sound ones, and this is probably where I wish that I had a product person who could actually do the business case and crunch all those numbers. I can't. It's really not my strength. But I did work with finance, with a very interested person from finance who was really trying to help. And I did the thing where we calculated like how much it is to reuse a component versus rebuild a component, et cetera, et cetera. And he crunched all the numbers, and at the end of the day, he told me the return of I can't justify the return of investment still, not in numbers. It's obvious that this is the right thing to do, but I still can't make it a number big enough that it would move the needle with leadership. So at the end of the day, I still had to just talk to leadership about the concept itself of a design system. Like, why would you want 4 teams redoing the same thing and wasting time? And they got that. So, but we had to sneak it into a business case for something else. It couldn't stand up on its own.
Yeah.
It baffled me. And in the past, this was the most recent, but in the past, I even had a senior, like a VP of product, looking at me and telling me that saving makes sense, but it's way too small. So on paper, I never managed to make the numbers look good enough. But it means that I had to rely on selling the vision to people. And I mean, maybe it got some enthusiastic people that are very happy to participate in this magical thing, which will help all the teams. There's something good in that too, I guess.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, absolutely. I think that, and the bigger picture is the vision and what it does to the client experience and how it improves that. That's really the big sell. I think I did feel like for about 4 months I became an accountant, like a design accountant, where I'm just sitting in spreadsheets and I'm going. And there was one moment I was like, shit, this whole design system thing doesn't make any sense. And then I went back to the numbers. I was like, oh, I forgot to do this and add this, and oh yeah, okay, phew, But it's really interesting. But when you really get into it, you start thinking, okay, but it's the creation of something that these 10 teams aren't doing. It's then the maintenance. How much is the maintenance of doing it? If you work with design leaders and tech, and I bring in design costs, dev costs, And then I say, okay, what about feature growth? So you've saved on the button the first time this website used it 3 years ago. But what about all the features we've added? Could we add a percentage for features? And I think as long as you're working with leadership and they're really happy with the numbers and the calculations you're making, you'd be surprised how much it's just purely, like you said, once instead of 4 times. If you can make those numbers work, like that really sells. From an efficiency point of view anyway, it makes a big difference.
And I think there's exploration as well. Like you can do a lot more exploration a lot quicker as well. So there are, but you're right, business want numbers and that can be challenging. And then we sort of need to sell that vision. And I actually think that product can play quite instrumental part in selling that vision. But we kind of need to sell it to them first. And I like what you're saying, you say you become an accountant. So I feel like as design system people, we have for a long time trying to get a place at the table, and to do that we need to know business, and now you're telling me that we also need to know accountancy. So great, I'm looking forward to that. So it's new skills coming up. So how do we get that sort of organizational buying and embedding the design system at scale? So, you know, we sort of established that we need to get people on board with it. We need to do senior leadership. If we can't do the money, can we only rely on the vision, or what else can we utilize? What else do we have in our arsenal and toolkit, or are we doomed? Do we all need to become accountants? Because
Accountancy does help. Yeah, accountancy does help. I think it is the vision. I guess a design system is doing 2 things. It's either creating efficiency in all different ways. You can think of all new ways that creates efficiency, or it increases quality, which I would put consistency and brand and everything. It's really doing, I think, those 2 things. It's saving the business money, speeding things up, it's efficiency. Then it is improving the client experience, and then creating things like client retention and added sales and all of those things. I think focusing on the value and telling that story is really what leaders care about. The fact that your design system is making the business money in some way, or saving money, and it's adding value.
I think another thing I would add to that would be having the right marketing internally for your team. And I think this is kind of where they probably need to hear the same story in terms of the narrative around it, but from many, many different people. It can't just be design system. You need to have those people who have bought into it also speaking up for you. So you need to have your allies, so to say, in different disciplines as well. So if designers and engineers are bought into it because they see the value day in, day out, you have representatives from their side who can speak up in different forums. So like Mike was talking about earlier, how our staff engineers Mike is our engineering manager, by the way. He was talking about how our staff engineers are really pushing for design system to be like, okay, ours is called Fable first for every new experience that we have to build. Having that voice massively helps. So I think it's just like selling the vision, having that story repeatable, often from several points, that helps concrete it. Because otherwise it's kind of like one of those things that gets forgotten and you're the only voice in the room who's constantly repeating it.
I agree with that, because it has to become normality. It has to become something that you don't need to sell anymore because it's obvious. Or you can also use the reverse psychology. I've done it a few times where I'm like, okay, sure, build your own thing from scratch.
Oh, I love that try. Let's give that a try as well. I love that. So if we bring this back to kind of like how do we invite products? So as a product person, I'm looking at you now. Do you find that it has helped you to have discussions with product people because you are a product person? Like, do you get more, I don't want to necessarily use the word respect, but do you vibe better with them because you're a product person?
It definitely helps in the sense that you are in the same groups of conversations when you're talking about what's coming up next in your work. You're there as part of those conversations, and it just really, really helps to be able to say, oh, and this is what we've got on the roadmap, and they're like, oh, design systems has so and so thing on the roadmap, and you're explaining in terms of like this will help you deliver that thing. So again, it's just that exposure. Hearing that often from the point of how is this going to be useful to me from a product person point of view, I think that becomes useful. And they're not hearing about it in some other event that only design system has organized. It is part of their everyday conversation, as every product team, anytime a big product team of like product managers get together, you're talking about it. It helps a lot.
Fair. I'm going to come back to a second. So there is a QR code behind me, and I would normally encourage you to put your questions in there. I'm not trying to check my phone. I'm trying to get this slider, but I have no internet here, so I am totally blind. I can't see your questions, and therefore I'm going to put you in a lovely position that if you have questions, you're going to have to ask them live. Isn't that wonderful? That's the perfect thing about being in person. You get to actually ask your questions live. So hold tight to those questions. We're going to come to those in a second. But yes, when you and I talked, we talked about language, and you said something which I thought was quite interesting. Product people doesn't necessarily care about the nitty-gritty of the pixels, etc., etc. Like, are we not using the right language? What do we do to...
Yeah, I mean, I guess the natural thing is you want to invite product people, so you'll invite them to a design conversation or a development conversation. Then you're going to talk about like pixel spacing or design tokens or whatever. And straight away, they're really busy. They need to get stuff done, and they are too busy for this conversation, and it will just seem too granular and grainy. But I think when I speak to product owners, you know, even little one-to-ones, getting to know them, like empathy, like you said, I think so key. So what's keeping you up? And I really got to put this thing live. Okay, we can give you this, and you can use this. I think often they'll think about things in features. You know, like, oh, this is a new feature. We're launching this new podcast player. Oh, well, I need that. Or often, I think what you'll find is people will think of your community's roadmaps almost like read only. You know, these are the roadmaps, and we need to feed those roadmaps. But often, as soon as you start speaking to them about what your roadmap is, then the roadmaps are really kind of fungible, because you can be like, oh, well, we'll launch a new filtering system in 3 months' time. Oh, wow, filtering. You know, we'd love to do filtering. We didn't think we'd do it this year, but if you're doing filtering, then we can move things forward. Like, often things are very arbitrary. So I like having that conversation one-on-one with POs and just saying, what are you trying to do for the next 3 months? And then we also have like really detailed planning. We have like really scaled, integrated planning that we do, and all sorts of things. But I do think one-on-one talking is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if I start talking about design tokens, I'll hear snoring in a second. Like, there's no way I'll hold a product person's attention if I start talking anything close to that level of depth.
Fair enough.
That's totally fair, but yeah, no, you said something that I really want to stress, because I know I talked a lot about how you need the leadership buy-in, but it's both sides at the PO level. Like, I've had a conversation this morning where I just basically invited a PO to like look into our Jira, and she found tickets that, to be honest, we had forgotten that they were even there because we put them there last year. She found them, and I was like, oh, I forgot that. We had a bit of a laugh. She started getting a bit involved in how we work, and that was just, that started a common language, or like, same as when I talk to individual developers, and they love the idea of the design system, and then they will advocate for it with their own teams, and they will bring product people along, because product will at the very least trust their own engineers. So it's back also to what you were saying about having many allies.
Yeah.
And also I would say we talked about them as allies, almost like we're the pusher for design systems, but really design system is just something that makes sense. Everyone should do it. Why is it always on us to put,
We need that t-shirt. Design system, it just makes sense. I love that. Actually, talking about that, so you mentioned in our conversation about almost piggybacking on engineering. So we know that product and engineers has been getting on well for a long time. So obviously, because they're just natural, yeah? Designers, we get on with everyone because we're just friendly, charming people. But you were talking about almost piggybacking on the engineering to sort of entice the product conversation. Tell me more about that.
So, at least at Sainsbury's, one of the things that I've come across is around how some of the stuff is built on legacy systems, and it means that there needs to be some sort of migration or replatforming to happen to be able to integrate with some of the work we do. Now, something like that would be considered tech debt. And at that moment in time, you kind of need the engineering manager or whoever is the engineering team to be able to kind of like support with the whole idea of like, as part of that, by the way, can we integrate with the design system? So that kind of support, I think that voice would come in a bit more strongly if there is that engineering support along the way. And also at Sainsbury's, we have a tech authority who does talk about, I think I mentioned it earlier in our conversation, who talks about if you're building anything new, use this frameworks, these tech stacks and this. I think having that as well massively helps. So having that engineering buy-in, because like before product was anywhere part of the conversation, engineering and design were kind of leading that, and a lot of the support was kind of like done from an engineering point of view as well, to be able to penetrate into the organization and get it using. So yeah, it definitely helps to have that kind of engineering support to be able to push some of these things. Because product managers look to, when it's a tech debt, they're kind of looking at engineering managers to help them understand, is it worthwhile investing into? And that's probably where they'll be able to kind of support you more.
That's where all your savings come from as well. Like tech, on average, you'll have at least 4 devs for one designer. If you're thinking about all the devs that are related to it, some companies are way more than that. Some companies are less.
Definitely.
So then if they're closer to product, and that's where all your numbers, if we're going back to numbers, are going to come from. Is the tech. It's not the design savings, because design will spend their time on other interesting things. Like research and all the good things we need to be doing.
Important thing, not just interesting. Yeah?
No.
Important. Very, very important. Stress that.
Important things.
Yes, absolutely. Great. So I think the kind of piggybacking on engineering, I think that's really interesting. So you basically, what I'm hearing here is that, first of all, we need to get, which we already know, we need to get business leadership buy-in. Then we need to get business leadership to support us to also make it a solid understanding to everybody across the business that the design system is happening. And I'm talking from experience myself here, because I see where we end up struggling, and it's because the people that we're coming to, whether they are product people or whether they are actually even brand people or marketing people, if they haven't been told that the design system is happening, they're not very open to it. But if it comes from above, well, I say from above, well, if it comes from above, if it's come from top down rather than us trying to say that this is happening, then that is really helpful. So we need to find that way to get that conversation happening. We need to ensure that when we do the conversation, we invite product people early on. That's for me, any design system job project that I've always been on is, one of the questions that I always ask is, who have you not invited to this kickoff call or to this kickoff conversation? Tell me who you think. And they're like, no, everyone's invited. And then we kind of go like, okay, where are the product owners? Where are the brand people? Where are the marketing people? Where anyone who's going to be somehow impacted by this design system, if they are not invited to the kickoff. And I also think that just because you're invited to a kickoff call doesn't mean that you're going to be deep into the project. But it gives people, oh, they thought about me, they included me, and then you know that this is happening, and then it's up to that person to say, what happened with that design system? Or it's up to you as a design system team to say, you don't need to do anything now, we come back to you when we need you, but now you know we exist. So I think that's sort of like, get the buy-in from the business, get the business to ensure that they tell everyone that this is happening, and make sure that you invite everyone from the beginning. And then what you guys are talking about, which I absolutely love, speak the right language. We said this in the past when we're talking about design, having a seat at the business table. We need to learn how to speak business. But we probably also need to learn how to speak product and learn how to speak brand. We need to know who we're speaking to. And actually, there's absolutely no excuse looking at all the designers in this room. There is no excuse, because we do user research all the time, and we pride ourselves on how good we are at talking with different people and understanding how to get information out of them. So utilize that skill when we're talking to product. Anything else? Have I covered most things there?
Yeah, I would just add one tiny
Go
thing.
for it.
We know that design systems are obvious. It's as obvious as microservices for most platforms.
Yeah.
So we should just start acting as if they're obvious. It will always start from design or engineering because we're the subject matter experts. But we shouldn't have to, in an ideal world, we would have a company come in to us and say, can you please build a design system so this can be more expedient? I think that sometimes, and this is especially in UX, sometimes we feel like we have to earn the seat at the table, and that this is a thing that will make our life easier, and we think it's just, and it's a project we're passionate about, therefore we need to sell it to others, we need to put in all of this work and all of this energy in convincing the company that they should drink water and sleep 8 hours.
True.
Like there's a point in which like the way we act should be, this is obvious, it's dumb that it doesn't exist already, so let's fix it together.
Yeah, and I think you touched a little bit on that earlier when you're looking at like services, yeah? So design system is almost like a service, and I think you mentioned people first, like design system first. Like if you're starting something, make sure that design system is part of that process. There is no question on whether it should be or not. You start with a design system in the same way that you would start with any other service, whether it's an engineering tool or whether it's a product tool, or then design system should be part of that. That's kind of touching a little bit on that, I guess.
Yeah, you have backend systems all the time. Like there are dependencies with other teams all the time, and it is just a fact.
Yeah.
It's just how you build products. And
Yeah.
design systems could be an infrastructure, can be an enabler, very much in the same way.
So I'm gonna throw it out to see, because I can't see the QR code, so you can tell me and say, yeah, I put loads of questions in there. I wouldn't know because I can't see it. Do we have any questions from the audience or comments? Well, I welcome comments, and do you know what? I'll even take a clapback if you have it. Yes.
Hi. I'd like to ask.
Can we hear this gentleman, or do we have a
I'll
microphone?
speak loud.
Yes, go for it.
I'd like to ask for each of the panelists. Oh, thanks. Each of the panelists' relative improvements since investing in design systems. Like, what are the relative, efficiencies that have been gained in your experience? And I guess it could be approximate. I'm not putting you on the spot, but and also like where those efficiencies have been gained in reference to the whole process of product and the delivery, like quarterly basis.
Well,
Where do we start? Go for it. I'm going to have to time box your answers there, because this is a presentation in itself, and I love that. Go for it.
my current design system has not been live long enough that I can answer all of those questions, but within designs, we've definitely seen how much faster it is to just set up a project from scratch, a new feature, and so on. Our designers are also a lot less stressed, and it's a lot easier to maintain like the visual consistency that is required. So at least within design, we're happy. Give us 6 months to a year, and maybe someone else will be happy too.
Can you repeat your question, please?
I'm looking for quantifiably somewhat. And qualitatively is good, but for quantifiably, like the efficiencies which have been gained within your business since introducing a design system, and where, as process of product delivery, those efficiencies have been observed.
Our design system is very old. So it's been around, what, 7 years, Mike? Yeah? 6, 7 years nearly. So it's hard to kind of go before and after quite that duration, because a lot would have changed generally in the landscape by then. But what we have noticed is when a new experience is being spun up, there is a big difference between when they use our design system and how quickly they go in terms of going live versus if they weren't. And I think we have a few case studies within ours to be able to go, oh, this particular experience, there is one of our experiences which gathered a lot of limelight from senior stakeholders. It went live really fast, and it was all our design system first, so that becomes a case study of how we talk about it. I can't give you the exact numbers or the details, but things like that have helped us talk about the efficiency side of things.
Yeah, I guess we've got, two levels to it. There's a lot of content, especially content and marketing experiences that just go out now with no development, where I think there would have been huge development teams related to them previously, and now it's all just content. And they're still playing catch up because there's so many features in the design system now that they've got so much to play with. And then we've got a lot of large projects really in the last 18 months that have launched super quickly because the designers aren't working on buttons anymore and the developers aren't working on buttons. They're all of this content, and then we're working alongside them on new features. But remember there was a really big project, really high budget for what it was. It was a short kind of stint of about 8 weeks, but it was a really huge team working large research, etc. But when it got to development, they did it in like less than 48 hours because of all the interaction patterns that were available. All the time was spent on research and user testing and design, etc. And then the problem was the leaders after that got the impression that you could launch something like that in like 48 hours. So that kind of,
The pressure.
it was difficult for the team. But yeah, I think it just proving it out. When we start to see changes in design and development where you have less kind of UI designers needed and more people that are kind of, there would naturally be product designers that are kind of doing a lot of UI. They're not doing the UI anymore. They're doing the research and they're doing kind of much more expansive roles. And then same thing for developers. They're not doing the buttons over and over and over again. They now don't have to do any of that stuff, so they're doing other things.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions, comments? Yes, absolutely.
Hi, thanks so much for this discussion. Super interesting. But what I found most interesting was that kind of like the relationship that you all were kind of almost saying as you know, normal in that between product as something, as if like product was something completely separate from design and engineering. So I work in a scale up and I'm very lucky that design always has a place at the table, always has a place with leadership. We never have to justify why we need a design system. The entire business gets it. So I think for people who are not in this position, what would you suggest to kind of equalize that relationship so that that's not the kind of like product as parent, design and engineering as children, or like design and engineering not having a place at that decision-making table?
Who wants to pick this up?
I'd love to, but I would use swear words.
I was very clear of introduction. Keep your language clean. So,
It's a beautiful question.
no, I think it's a great question. And yeah, sorry, anyone else before I rant up? So just so I understand it correctly, how do we ensure that there is a equal hierarchy? Sorry, equal hierarchy. There is a level between. Yeah. So first of all, I have a very strong opinion about this whole thing. I'm going to start by talking the name design system. I think the problem for me starts there. The problem starts that it's called design system. It's an unfortunate thing that it ended up being design system because it ultimately means that it took a long time before engineers were interested because it's got a word design in it. And eventually when they realized actually it's really useful for all of us, so they're on board. So all of a sudden designers and engineers are equal. Product is probably looking at it a little bit in the same way, kind of like, oh, it's got design in it, so okay, there's something. So one thing is just wording and language, I would say. The other thing is also that for me, product, regardless whether we talk about engineering or we're talking about product or we're talking about designers or business analysis or whatever your back end, front end, at the end of the day, we all product. We're all building the same product. And for me, I think that's a good starting point to get to what you're talking about. How do we need to be better at getting everyone to understand that we are not actually factions of product versus design. And I appreciate that I'm using that language up here, let's invite product. We are actually just all of us trying to build the same product. And whether you are a business analyst or whether you are a researcher or whether you are a UI designer, all our goal is the same. We just want this product to be successful. So I think if we can get to, well, it's starting to sound a bit like, oh, we all got to love each other, but we all got to respect each other. And I think that's, for me, is a good starting point. And that's why I want to invite everyone, regardless of who they are. If they're going to get impacted by whatever it is we're doing next, they should be part of that conversation. And then you become equal because everyone has the same investment from the beginning. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think for me, it's about that equal respect and investment. No, and I didn't even use any foul words.
You're better than me.
Anything else? What's your take?
I think we mentioned empathy earlier. I think what's in the control of a designer or a developer in that situation is really empathizing and trying to kind of build a bond with the product owner that they're working with. I guess from an org point of view, the kind of dynamic has to be set in the way that the teams are structured and the organisation is structured. Because if it is hierarchical and it's kind of products and then design and developer are all just about delivery, then I think it's really difficult. But I guess every company is different. You're in a position. I would just start with empathy and trying to connect and understand the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is very much dependent on the organization. The roles that are played just within product design and engineering. I've worked in companies where they're at equal footing. I've worked in places where something is a bit more, one discipline is dominating, so to say. So it really, it's a hard one to kind of answer, because it's like, it depends on how the organizational structure is and what you're paying attention to, or like how it kind of started off, sometimes it's like the founder is a designer, so now the designer has a seat at the table and there is like VP of design, but sometimes it's not. It kind of is really nuanced, I think. But in general, it just comes down to that of like, each discipline has a role, and whether it's product vision or strategy, you need input from all the teams in order to actually enable any work that's happening. So it's just kind of like being conscious of that. At least that's what the product should be thinking at any given point, of like equal partners. If you don't have that understanding and that representation, you're missing a huge opportunity.
Excellent.
I thought of something that doesn't have swear words.
Oh, great. Please share.
I love what you said about empathy, and usually that's my line, because empathy is the foundation of it. Like I was saying earlier, the product people that freak out at the risks and dependency, it's because they're accountable, so they're reasonably stressed, and all of that is true. At the same time, I am a big believer of you also need to keep an eye on your self-worth and on not burning out, because like you were saying, companies will be companies. The way they're set up, whether or not they think the design should be at the table, sometimes you can influence that, sometimes you can't, and you may burn yourself out if you try. So just keep an eye on like your own health and the effort that you put in, because ultimately design should be an equal seat at the table with product, with tech, and with everything else. And if it's not, I mean, it's not like we should beg. It's in the company's interest to have it.
One small point I wanted to add.
Go for it.
I think if we think of the dynamic, and you mentioned the business, that's a really good way to talk about it. Because if you think about the kind of triad, you've got designers, developers, and often the product is the business. The product has that kind of, they're the home team, they're the representing the business. So I think sometimes that puts them in a position of power.
Yeah, true.
Something like in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, because I think that kind of gives product almost the business ears, like, you know, so that's, I do we have any other comments or questions? Yes, we have one at the back over there.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so at our organization, thanks. At our organisation, we went for a kind of we started a bottom-up approach with the design system, as you usually do, kind of get the designers, engineers on board. And then we kind of encountered a lot of resistance when it came to product, because we went for a federated, or semi-federated system, where we had engineers having to contribute for the upfront investment from their teams. So we eventually just decided to kind of sidestep product because it's too difficult, or got too difficult, and we went straight to leadership, right? And that was good. Well, in one way it was good because we got really good, like strong buy-in from leadership and big investment. However, now it's come kind of full circle and bit us in the back a little bit, where the product feel a bit cornered, I would say, right? Because you kind of have the engineers and designers on board and the leadership, but they're not fully there. So, I think one part of it I can definitely see is it feels like to them probably that it's kind of like this mandated thing that they have to, give investment or part of their engineering resources to, and that's going to slow them down for a certain amount of time. So I think my question is to you, how can we, we talked about empathy, but how can we approach this conversation with product, being in the difficult position we're already in, to make them feel like well, to make them feel a bit more welcoming about the system. I know it's a difficult one because we've kind of cornered them a little bit, but yeah, that's essentially my question.
I guess the question then would be, what exactly is the concern that the product discipline is showing? Because a lot of the times it comes down to, how do I fit that in my roadmap? Because if I put that in, something else gives.
Yeah.
And then they are accountable to their senior stakeholders to say, why couldn't we deliver that X thing, whichever one that you booted out of your roadmap, because you need to fit design systems in. But if the senior leadership is bought in, then it's easier to explain. It's like, oh, you guys also wanted us to do this, so that means that this particular feature will have to stay for a little longer, wait for a little longer, because we need to integrate this.
I guess it's more sentiment is what I'm talking about. Yes. So the internal look for the design system from their perspective is quite a negative one, but for the rest of the organisation it's quite positive.
So it feels like a coup.
A little bit.
A little bit. Like, oh, you sidestepped me and now we are forced with this.
Yes.
I would say there was one side in which time heals things, like let things boil over, and eventually it will just be so obvious that everyone will forget, or not. The approach that I tend to prefer is go one-on-one level with people, not in group settings where they will feel like they have something to maintain and uphold and a certain image that they can sustain. Just go one-on-one level, rebuild that trust. If they want to throw their toys on the pram still, well, we tried, but yeah, one-on-one is usually better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's like if the sentiment's there, you've just got to kind of let it out. You've got to be with them, speak to them, and let them, like give it to you. Let them punch it out.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
Just talk it through. Yeah, because they're going to have all this kind of resentment, and like you said, it's beyond the kind of capacity issues and stuff you could work out. It's just going to be something really abstract and unrational. So I think it's just about talking it through. Yeah, and just draining it really. Yeah.
I don't know if you're a designer or an engineer.
I'm a designer.
Okay, so I would go back to that what we talked about empathy. So, and I would kind of lean on that design approach. When you're trying to understand the user and you sit down with them and you try to understand what are your pain points, what are your problems, what are your concerns. And I agree with you guys. It's a one-to-one conversation. You just got to hear them out. It's you put your therapy hat on and you say, do you know what? Talk to me about this.
Because we're also therapists now.
Yeah. So we got accountants, business, and therapists. Yeah.
Thank you.
And it is kind of just like, talk to me about this. What are your concerns? Why is this worrying you? And then try to work out through good conversation on how you cross that bridge. I did see an arm going up here. Yes, let's take this one as well. Yes, go for it. Absolutely, it's on its way.
Sorry, just one person.
Christine is getting a good exercise. Sorry, Christine.
It sort of builds on the last thing that you just said. There was obviously a joke about being therapists and accountants and stuff. Aren't design systems set up to fail? Yeah. In the sense of, like, it's actually testament, Benny, to what you said earlier, is the fact that they're actually successful in spite of everything that we've talked about. And let's be honest, this isn't the first conference or panel talk that I've been to where people have talked about adoption, buy-in, relationships with product. Are we in a situation where we're actually an externalized product team, which in any other format would have customer support, would have customer relationship management, would have marketing teams, would have all of the other things that you expect from a product startup that gets integrated into a small startup or an enterprise. But we give that responsibility to a designer and engineer who, let's be honest, didn't
ask for it,
train for it.
No, I agree.
And so one of the things I look at is, are we even going about this in fundamentally the wrong model? And that is a very open and broad question, but it's something I think about every day.
I think that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm hearing a talk at the Future DSL being brewed up right now.
I have no answers, hence the question.
Fair, touche.
I 100% agree with you. It's kind of what I was trying to hint with earlier, where it's like, in an ideal world, we shouldn't be the ones that, like, maybe we propose it as an idea, but it should be the company that wants it. It shouldn't be on us to having to push it, having to convince people that this is the right thing, and then having to work extra to make it work and prove that it works and convince them and come and look, like, see, it worked, I was right. It's dumb. It's like we work the same amount of time as everyone else does, but we're asked to do 4 jobs. It is not fair and it doesn't work. I think it's just, I mean, we can go on a rant later about where I think the product design is generally at right now. It's not great. But I do agree with you. I think, though, that in places where at least leadership has a good understanding of the pros and cons and on the need to reuse and not recreate, it could be smoother. And we've seen it with technology. Technology is ahead of design in that sense. Their organizations are more mature in technology. So there is hope that they will become mature in terms of design as well. Like right now, most startups will build using microservices without even thinking about it. One day they will also build design systems in a proper structure. Maybe, if we get to that, if we don't get tired first.
Any quick comments from either of you?
It is very much like having a startup within a large organization, isn't it? It really is, but it's just that that's never how it actually begins, and that's the point that you're trying to kind of like illustrate, right? So, yeah, I mean, if you were to kind of take on a design systems one, really have to think about it as a product. Unfortunately, it's not just customers who are willing to buy, it's the ones who really don't want to buy, and you need to convince them to buy. So that's a different challenge altogether. Like, how many products we go out into the market with, like, no product market fit, but we are going to make it fit. That doesn't often happen, right? Like,
yeah.
But it is one of those unfortunate situations for some reason. But yeah, hopefully, over time, it becomes the norm, and then you're not having to kind of fight for it every time.
I would say design systems are really cool. And we love them. And we're here because we love them, but they are really hard.
They are.
And like to do something you love, you also have to do all of this stuff. You know, like you want to fix the roof, you've got to fix everything to fix the roof first. We've got this kind of blueprint in our design system, and we've got like all the way from, you know, input in and planning through to like advocacy and literally client support, because we do need support. We have a whole, since January, we kind of broke off one of the groups to a squad, and it's called Community Enablement, and we focused that completely on the infrastructure, the platforms, the tickets, the questions, because we needed that level of focus, because you get to that point where it's not just all about starting the design system, it's now about everyone's dependent on it. So it's about keeping up with all of the questions. But yeah, it's tough. It's totally different from a normal product that's rolling out. And sometimes it's wrong to judge it as just another product team. I think it's a completely different.
Yeah, I would say it's the same. Like, it's not necessarily just a separate product team, it's a service team. And I think what is important for anybody about to start a design system or thinking that their organization should do it, first of all, go for it. But before you do, which I often talk about to people when we start that design system journey together, are you fully understanding what it is that you're taking on? And often the answer is no. So then your job becomes to explain that to people and be very clear and keep on repeating what it is they're taking on. And I'm not even talking about the stuff that we're talking about here. I'm talking about exactly what you're saying. Like, you are building something which is going to sit with your business for a long time, and it's going to end up being a service. And if you just think components, you are failing. You're going to 100% fail, because there's a whole other bunch of things that you need to think about. And some of those things you may not have asked for. See what I did there? I would love to continue, and we are going to continue. We're going to continue through those doors and do the drinks and stuff, because unfortunately I have to wrap up here. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to come to me directly. These guys are around as well. Chat to each other. But yeah, I want to thank you so much for joining me. And thank you guys for your questions. I hope you all found that panel useful and interesting. I thought it was very exciting. My heartbeat was working away, so it's great. There was a lot of interesting things talked about there, and as I said before, if anybody wants to continue conversation, I didn't have time to talk to everyone during the break, but I'll be here after these 2 talks, so please continue. Speaking of the 2 talks, God, segues is my thing, I'm telling you, I've worked my segues. Design system is not only about the problems between product design and engineering, it's also about delightful things. See, I told you about my segues. And how could you systemize them, you might ask yourself. Do you know what? Ask no more. I want to introduce our next speaker. It's my pleasure to welcome on stage Molly.
Hi, am I all mic'd in? Everything good? How do I work this? Okay, we're good. Everything's good. So hi, my name's Molly Nye. I'm a UI designer on the design system team at Just Eat Takeaway. And now a fact I can tell you about myself, a little icebreaker if you will, is so you know Snoop Dogg's rap that he did for a Just Eat advert? I, upon getting this job, decided to learn it in its entirety. So that is a skill I have, and no, I will not be doing it tonight. So I would best describe myself as a UI designer with a knack for bringing products to life using visual storytelling. I've been really fortunate enough to be able to forge a career crafting illustrations and animation and taking brand identity and bringing it into product. So essentially, I am looking after all of the aspects of our design system that make our products more delightful. And as well as being the person that creates these assets, I'm also on the design system team, which means I get to figure out how we bring them into our design system and also how we implement them into product. So I could talk to you all day about this, but I'm going to just focus on 2 aspects of that today. So illustrations and animation. So as I said, I'm on the design system team at Just Eat. Our design system is called PI. So that stands for Principles for Interfaces and Experiences. It's a bit of a mouthful, pun intended. But before PI and before Just Eat, and even before I was a UI designer, I was actually an artist. I was an artist with very questionable hair choices, with very thin eyebrows, which really dates this photo. And I used my middle name as a surname to be more edgy and more cool. And I went to art school. And I also worked as a face painter on weekends at different theme parks in the UK. This is me in 2010 at Thorpe Park Fright Night after a really busy shift. And probably painting the faces of kids that are now actually starting their career, which is quite horrifying when you think about it. But the first thing you might notice about this is that actually it's really chaotic. And that kind of sums me up, not only as an artist, but as a person, right? I am extremely chaotic and messy. And it's this kind of a stereotype of artists, right? We are really messy and unorganized. We're inconsistent and unpredictable. But we're also visual storytellers, and we're incredibly expressive. Ultimately, we value delight over systems. And the same can be said for the art that we create. Design systems, however, are very much the opposite. So they're incredibly organized, they're consistent and predictable. They solve problems for the users rather than create them. And they tend to prioritize system and usability over delight. So the challenge comes is, how do we take the art, which normally isn't created for design systems, it's usually very large and very chaotic and very messy, and how do we turn that into something that fits nicely in our design system and can be usable? So I want to introduce you to our illustration style, and it's created by a wonderful illustrator called Vicky Garcia. It's kind of made up of large scale and small scale illustrations. And what I love most about it is how diverse they are, how they're really delightful. Sorry, my slides are in different orders. So our style guide on our illustrations is made up of our colour palette, which is our brand colours. We have like a secondary palette that's only used in illustrations. We have a skin colour palette. We have different brushes and different patterns and different textures that really kind of make the illustrations just have so much more depth, and they're so much full of delight. And so when Vicky's contract ended, I took up the pencil, per se, and I started creating illustrations for products. And this is fun for a huge number of reasons, but my favourite is that I got to put my in-jokes into product. So now if you delete your account on Just Eat, you get my soon-to-be husband waving you goodbye with a sad Just Eat balloon. He is thrilled, by the way. So this is our illustration library. It's constantly evolving along with our design system. And we currently have about 259 unique illustrations in product that are created by Vicky, myself, a fantastic new illustrator called Mel, who also works within as a designer on Just Eat. We have the large scale, which there's 144 of those, but then there's ×2 of that for light and dark theme, which I'll get onto a bit more about later. We also have 115 small scale illustrations. And so when building out this library in our design system, I had to really take into consideration lots and lots of different things. But the number one most important thing was the file size and optimization. So each of these illustrations were originally created on a really big Illustrator file, their own Illustrator file, if you will. They were each created to a 1080 by 1080 pixel artboard, and each of them were huge. So even as SVGs, they were massive. This one's about 377 KB, which when you start adding them all into product, really add up and make our app much more slower, much more laggy, and it's something that people just don't want to download. And the reason why it's so big, because I know what you're thinking, SVGs aren't typically massive files, but the reason why this one was so big is because it's full of information. And if you've ever created vectors in Illustrator, you'll know that nodes or anchors kind of mark the different points where the direction turns in the illustration. And this was full of thousands. The reason, by the way, is also both Vicky and myself use drawing tablets to create artwork. And as well as like kind of creating a really nice handmade feel within the art, it unfortunately adds a lot more information into the piece. As you can see here with the brushstrokes that were all kind of nicely added, there are thousands of pieces of information in just those tiny brushstrokes. So the challenge began, how do we get this into our design system? And so it started with a manual optimization process that myself and a colleague, Ting Ting, started work on. So we took each of our illustrations and we brought them in to one single AI file to keep them all in one place. And the value of this is pretty much that we have a visual guide of all of our illustrations in one place. This one is specifically just for the large light scale ones. And then, as well as that, we resize them to 200 by 200 pixels. It means that we can export them all at once, which is great. And I also separated the background from the illustrations, which meant that I could toggle that on and off as I exported them. So as we see here, we have the original brushstroke ones and then the ones that I created. Now, I really, 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 really wanted to preserve the brushstrokes of these illustrations because I felt that's where a lot of the character was. And so what I first did to try and manually optimize these assets is go in and kind of try and combine shapes and kind of reduce the nodes that way. I really didn't want to touch the brushstrokes in any way. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get the file down enough, and so I had to touch the brushstrokes. And so the way I handled this was by creating a new brush in Illustrator that was smooth, so it didn't have all of those different nodes or pieces of information. And I then went through each illustration one by one, and I redrew all of the line work for each one. And it brought it down quite considerably. So now we have all of our illustrations at 200 by 200 pixels, which also I forgot to say, we kind of worked with our engineers on this, and they felt that 200 by 200 pixels was probably the best size for in product. And then this one particularly got down to 49 KB, which is a massive reduction. And we also, I further got this down another 10 to 20% just by pushing it through a online SVG optimizer as well. So, I'm going to take a drink. Sorry, my throat this morning is not great. Should we use SVGs or PNGs? And now we obviously use SVGs for in product. But the question remains, what should we use in our Figma files? And you're probably saying, well, obviously it should be SVGs. That would make more sense. And you're not wrong. We use it for all of our iconography. We use it for our logos as well. It would make sense, surely, that we would use SVGs. Well, unfortunately, oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to explain something that's happened here that's really weird. So originally the file... So I tried to recreate, what you see on this side is the bug that I was trying to recreate. And then somehow the bug actually happened on the other side, which is really interesting. But basically, that's not supposed to happen. Everything is supposed to be very much contained within the shape. I don't know what's happened there. I assume, however this has been looked at, the clipping mask has failed. But basically, the reason why this happens is because in Illustrator, when you bring these into Figma, Figma can't read the clipping mask that we use in Illustrator. And so all of these patterns that are contained in a mask are uncontained, essentially. I thought Figma fixed this, and so I was trying to recreate it, and apparently I didn't need to do that. So I should have just brought a PNG in for the first. But the other main reason that I didn't want to bring vectors into Figma is because with designers, or designers using our design system, it feels a lot sometimes like we're kind of herding cats. It's a futile attempt to control that which is inherently uncontrollable. And what I mean by that is when you bring an SVG into Figma, you have all of these different vector shapes, which are shapes that can be easily manipulated. They can be recolored, they can be moved around. They can essentially be uncontrollable. And so, oh, it's doing it again, love. And so what this means is that you could potentially take parts of an illustration and move them around or recolor them and essentially dilute the brand identity and also get brand really angry at me. And so we use PNGs for our design system library, much more control, much easier to work around. And we have a big banner at the top that says Pi illustration exports, SVGs, can all be found in the Pi illustrations repository. And unfortunately, this banner sits at the top and it hasn't stopped all developers from exporting it from Figma and then messaging me and asking why it doesn't work. So what about dark theme? So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we have obviously light theme and dark theme. And it makes sense that when our illustrations were created, dark theme wasn't necessarily something that was being thought about. Because when Vicky created these illustrations, she created them not just for product, but for all sorts of areas in our business. So these illustrations are used in decks, they're used in our office, they're used pretty much everywhere, not only product. But we definitely felt that we needed a dark theme variant, and the quickest way of us doing this without too much hassle was to essentially take our source of truth file that we created in Illustrator and bring it through into a new file, which we then call dark theme, and quickly grab all of our backgrounds and change them to our token equivalent or dark theme token equivalent of what we used for the light theme. And that was just the quickest way of us doing it. What I will say is that engineering decided that actually the best way of handling this would be a one-to-one swap. So we would take our light illustrations and swap it out with a dark illustration. It wouldn't be a token switch. And then in Figma, obviously we're using PNGs, and we brought those in, and we use it a bit like a component. So we have a toggle to switch it between light and dark, and this just means that designers can pull in those illustrations and then toggle it between the different themes. So the fourth was using illustrations. And again, I said earlier that designers using the design system are a bit like herding cats. Again, a futile attempt to control that, which is inherently uncontrollable. And so a way for us to control this was to look at documentation. And I think out of all the documentation that we have in our design system, our illustration guidelines really do come with the most warnings and the most disclaimers. But I just wanted to pull out some bits of our documentation that I thought were really cool. So the first is we have a hierarchy of content. This basically tells designers that they should be using photography first and foremost, then using iconography, and then using illustration last. And this is basically to guide designers to use illustration as kind of the least important element on the screen. And a lot of designers love using illustrations, and they kind of overuse them. So we wanted to really dial back on that. We also set like a scaling guide. So we have our small scale illustrations and our large scale illustrations. And we basically set a guide to use them at different sizes. So our small can be used at a 64 pixels up until about 140. And then you go to a large, and that can be used up to about 500 pixels. And then, interesting. Sorry, I realised that none of the clipping is working, and it looks terrible, so we're just going to ignore all of that. But we move. We also had the visual do's and don'ts, where we basically showed the best way of using illustrations along with our other components, and also using illustrations side by side with each other or in combination with each other. Our fifth consideration was making illustrations available. And going back to this banner in the Pi illustration exports, I did mention we have a Pi illustrations repository. And now it used to be that we had a Google Drive with all of our illustrations inside. But we've since transferred to a GitHub repository, which is way more effective and way more brilliant. And essentially, this is our Pi illustrations repository that both iOS and Android currently pull from. And we're still trying to get web to jump on board. But just say we can make a change on this repository to one of the illustrations. It means that wherever this illustration is within product, it will update automatically, which is fantastic. And the engineers also taught us designers how to do it. So we can jump on and do a little bit of feeling like an engineer, which is great. We also have a change log. So if we make a change to an illustration or we add a new one, we'll make those changes and record that in this change log. And that's just to keep engineers informed about what's going on. A lot of the time, it's just kind of good to know. Or it might kind of let them know that they need to review something in the repository. So our current process looks a little bit like this. We have, if sometimes it's a product manager or sometimes it's a designer, we'll request an illustration. Then we'll go through and we'll create it. We'll get it signed off by brand. We'll go through an optimization process, and then we'll put that in Figma and also the repository. And it just means that we have a really streamlined flow for how illustrations are handled in our design system. And so I just wanted to bring up another piece of work that I kind of did as kind of a fun project. I call this the Jet Avatar Generator, and honestly, I just did this for a bit of fun, because I'm a geek like that. But essentially, I wanted to see what would happen if we pulled in our illustrations and kind of use them as we do components. So essentially, I created a mini design system, and I drew out all of these different hairstyles and faces and beards and clothes, and I brought in all of our color palettes, and I pulled that all together into one image. And the outcome was basically creating different personalized illustrations with different diverse characters that could be really quickly changed and updated. And honestly, this hasn't really had much use in product. I tend to use it for decks or personas. If anyone needs a quick illustration in our brand style of a person, we have it. And it just is a fun way of me creating kind of all of our team members, actually. I've also used this as my Slack photo for like 2 years. But I guess the reason I wanted to bring it up was because I think it kind of opens up a conversation for how we can use design systems and use tools like Figma to kind of create creative assets as we do components and really kind of open up the possibilities for how we use illustrations. So what about animated illustrations? Because I did promise there were some animations in here also. This is a really fun project I worked on. It's the after order flow animations on Just Eat, and it's one of the most fun projects I've been lucky to work on. For all of our animated illustrations, we use something called Lottie. Lottie, I don't know if you've used it or if you haven't, but essentially it's a tool that allows us to create smaller files to be used in product. And it's a really, really great entry tool if you're creating animations in products. The only problem that I have with it is that sometimes Lottie doesn't always allow or doesn't always support After Effects in certain ways. So there's a lot of things you can do on Lottie, but there's a lot of things you can't do. One of those is rigging. You can't rig on After Effects, which means that if I'm doing character illustrations and animations, it sometimes feels a little bit robotic compared to what I could do if I used rigging. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the end-to-end process on how I create animations from our illustration library. And it kind of starts back with this original AI file, the source of truth, if you will. Because obviously to make any animated illustrations, we need to have an optimized file to do that. And so one of the benefits of having this file ready to go is that I can take any of these and try and animate them. And I can do it a lot quicker than if I was doing it from scratch. So what I'll do is I'll bring out one of those animated illustrations and I'll pull it into its own file. I'll then separate it on its based by its layers, and it will really depend on how I want it to animate. So I might kind of separate a hand and separate a foot, or separate different people, or the disco ball, or the bag. And then I bring that into After Effects, and I won't go through all of what I do to kind of animate, but essentially I get it to a point that I'm really happy with. This one in particular, I used two different animations within one. So you have like a transition, which is like the big entry moment. So for this one, this appears when the order is delivered and you're like really celebrating that moment. And then it plays on a gentle loop afterwards, so until the user will close that part of the app. And then I'll export that using a tool called Body Moving. The G is silent. And pull all of that into Lottie. And Lottie is really great for one particular thing, and that's kind of organizing all of my animations. So we have splash screens in product. We have about 18 different localized splash screens. So different languages of did somebody say, and then also different markets. And this is a really great way of just housing all of those and kind of keeping track of them. We obviously also, every time there's a holiday, like a Valentine's Day, or sometimes we'll do like Champions League content as well. It's a way of keeping track of all of those because I have to do like 18 versions every single time I do something new in there. And of course, I'll add it to documentation. So I'll bring in a GIF of how it should look for easy handover to development. I'll mark where the transition markers are and the looping markers. I'll give like an overview. I'll link out to our Lottie files. Yeah, I'll just make it really easily available to engineers so that they know where everything is. And finally, also in that Google file, I'll add still animations. And this is essentially just an illustration, right? But it's supposed to capture a bit more movement within our animated illustrations. So I've kind of put a bit more information in there than I would a typical illustration. And we use this for, as well as, emails and other pieces of content. We also use it for accessibility reasons. So if someone turns off or turns on reduced motion settings in their phone, they will see this instead of the actual animation. And so to kind of bring it all back together, we're still constantly looking at different ways of systemizing motion, and we're looking at different tools at the moment for how to do that. And maybe it's Lottie. Lottie Labs has come out recently, and there's lots of really cool things and features that we can do with that. There's also Figma, and keeping it local to Figma. And there's also a new tool called Rive that we're currently just exploring a little bit, which is kind of the next kind of big motion tool on the block. But you never know, in a couple of years I might be talking about a completely different tool because there's stuff coming out all the time, and hopefully in a couple of years you'll see me doing another talk about systemizing delight that talks way more about motion and way more about how things have advanced in like the last few years. So thanks for listening. My name's Molly Nye, and you can find me on LinkedIn using Molly India Nye. And if you want to check out our design system, you can just go to pi.design. Hi.
I just surprised her by saying, come and join me. She had no idea this was going to happen. But I thought it would be weird, both of us standing over there when we have chairs. So we might as well take a seat. So do we have any, well, first of all, fantastic talk. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Do we have any questions for Molly? Any comments? Don't all go at once. Everyone calm down, hold back. This is not really a question. This is more of a, I think when you and I chatted, I got really excited about this because we have in our team, we've actually tried to kind of break down our illustrations. And I've got people from marketing here, and I love them, and they are always asking us for help, and we try to make as much as we can. But actually, it can be quite difficult sometimes to create things, illustrations, and that kind of thing quickly.
Yeah.
So we did exactly that. We looked at our illustrations, and we started breaking them down into different, kind of like a component, and create a mini design system to help us create illustrations faster. Mm-hmm. I think what I find a bit challenged with that is that I was worried that we ended up, my concern was that they will look too similar, and they were kind of like, people will start realizing that this bit is the same bit as over here, and they're a bit too like, how have you worked around to ensure that you don't lose the art integrity in this?
Well, to be honest, I think that when we look at illustrations, it's kind of an industry standard that we reuse things. Like if you look at animation, like Disney will always reuse frames of animation, and no one really notices. And even in the illustrations that we create, I'm constantly going over older illustrations and then kind of drawing over it and doing it in a different way, adding slight differences, and no one's really noticed. So I don't really know what to say to that except for
keep doing it.
Keep doing it, yeah.
Maybe it's one of those things that you think about it because you're creating it, but other people don't.
I think that's probably it, yeah.
I love the Disney example. It's like when you realize that it's the same bear in Bunny. It was like,
exactly.
I just like, what?
Everyone does it, so just also do it. It's fine.
Okay, well, in that case, for those people on my team that are here, let's just keep doing that. Don't do it too much. That was, sorry? I don't know. I didn't hear what she's saying. I have no idea. It's like, it's a long process. It takes a really long time. Yeah, but that's exactly why we did it, because we had people wanting more illustration. Yes, absolutely. We got two people. Let's start with you over there.
So I saw that you have splash screen, 18 of them. That is crazy in itself, like creating different splash screens for an app. In terms of how to justify that, in terms of like we need to spend so much hours in building 18 splash screens, how do you put a number or how do you justify this spending hours on it?
Yeah, well, I guess, so the other thing is obviously we have landscape, and so for landscape we also have versions for that. We tend to not use the did somebody say text on landscape because it's just too much fiddling around, and we just use the house. We are having more and more conversations about potentially simplifying it because it's quite a lot to deal with. But also, I guess it does add like an element of delight. I'm going to say that a lot. Because obviously, whether you're in Spain, we have an Irish version. We have, all these different languages in different countries. And there's something quite nice about going on there and seeing did somebody say in your language. I guess it gets trickier because we have also different localizations for different countries. So obviously in countries like Switzerland, where you're using like German and French, it's kind of opens up the how do we work out what region we're going to put those in. Yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. I'm glad I have Lottie to do that. I guess a way of making that easier for myself is I tend to use a lot of compositions. So in After Effects, you can create compositions and then I kind of just reuse those compositions. So actually it's not as much work as it looks. I have the house logo and the way it zooms out kind of already pre-made with also the did somebody say text. And sometimes it's just about adding additional elements and recreating them. And honestly, it's not the longest thing in the world.
Excellent, thank you. We have over here, yes, please.
Hi, thanks, Molly. Yeah, really, really good and really delightful. I guess my question was, in a design system world where Figma's the tool, Storybook is typically the tool for engineers, introducing Rive or Lottie or Illustrator is kind of maybe a new concept for some design systems. How have you kind of overcome challenges when it comes to getting people familiar with yet another tool and how to use it and how to export and, well, not export from Figma, but yeah, just get familiar with them?
Yeah, I guess different tools are going to be used by different people. So I would never have like an engineer necessarily dive into Illustrator. I think they would freak out at me. But I guess for other designers who might want to also do that, I think I have to rely quite a bit on enthusiasm. So like we're looking at Rive as a tool at the moment, and we talked to them and had a really great demo with them. And so basically they were kind of saying that it's getting the enthusiasm of other designers, other engineers, people that want to like learn new tools, because not everyone is going to be on board. But there are people that are really interested in learning new tools. And I guess there is kind of a problem with, having all of these different tools, and there has to be some kind of like bringing it all together. And to be honest, it's something we're still working out, and I think it's going to continue to be like a talking point. I think it's not a problem, but I think it's a struggle in like any company, because you have so many great tools, right, that create so many cool things, and you don't want to just ditch one because the adoption rate isn't great. Probably wasn't the best way of answering, but still.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more if there's any. Oh, I think the lady in white. Okay.
How did you manage transitioning to GitHub?
Interesting. So luckily we have really, really fantastic engineers who created a Confluence doc for us, which is a step-by-step guide, and I'm forever grateful for that. Also, I can just be like, hello, please help. I think I did something wrong. And they'll be like, okay, have you followed the doc? And I'm like... And then they'll be like, follow the doc.
Of course I have.
Remember to follow the doc, okay. But no, they are great and they answer lots of questions and they're really patient, and the documentation, when I do read it, is fantastic. So it was a bit of a learning curve, but it's... I don't know if I can. Don't know. I'll get back to you on that. Come see me after.
It's like the reverse that normally is in the design system. It's normally we who tell them, have you read it in documentation? I did say the last question, but you actually had your hand up as well, so this is definitely the last one.
Can I say a few words about how you define the best art direction for your illustration?
What was that, sorry?
Sorry, can we get the microphone over there, please? Sorry, not your fault.
Thanks a lot. Can you say a few words about how you define your process to define the best art direction for your illustration?
I mean, as I said earlier, this style was created by a wonderful illustrator called Vicky Garcia, and I essentially kind of work with her to mirror what is essentially her style and our jet style. I guess it's kind of a different question because obviously as an artist I kind of have my own processes, but I wouldn't say that I'm using them here. It's hard to answer, but if you want to catch me later, I might be able to answer it better in a more personal way, I guess. Sorry, that didn't really answer it.
Thanks.
But I think that, I mean, very quickly, I think that's a fair point, though, because it's a system, right?
Yeah.
And it's a illustration style
Yeah.
that is part of a brand. Whatever you're doing in a systemizing way, or whether you're taking someone else's brand, you ultimately sort of, there is a give, you have to give something away from your artistic,
Yeah.
from you being an artist, because you have to follow the brand. So there's a different type of artistry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's all.
Okay, that's all we have time for now. Delightful, I would say. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank
it was
you.
an absolute pleasure. Big round of applause. So Molly was forced to do a Q&A with me quickly. Her response might be, I didn't ask for this. I told you about the segue. So speaking about not asking for things, there might be things you don't sign up for. So I would like to, who definitely signed up for this, it's our next speaker, Dan. Please join. Oh, you're back.
No font. First fail. The font's not there. Sorry, these slides are for me, not for you. It's because I can't remember the story I'm going to tell without them. So I'm Dan. I'm currently a design. What am I these days? I've been a lot of things. I'm product design manager at Gymshark now. These are the old slides. I've updated them since. Oh, okay, cool. Anyway, this is a short talk. You're going to take a lot away from it. So to make a design system, we all know you open Figma. That's all we really need. So you make some components. Doesn't really matter how many. Songs are really good and you spend a long time on them. You're kind of done. So I hope that was useful. And but the thing is, that's what we often get told. There's so much great stuff written in the community that people share about their experiences and what they find work. But a lot of it is focused on that kind of journey. And that doesn't really bear any resemblance to the real world. Not really. So why is it so difficult? Why is it not just you crack open Figma, you do what you love, you do what you know, and then everyone has a good time? That would be lovely. But it feels like we're not fulfilling the promise of design systems. So they're supposed to be quite a utopian ideal in a way, like, we'll just bring everyone together, man, and we'll share things, and we'll be creative, and like the engineers will be on board, and like products will get it, and that would be so cool. We feel like we've done all the right things because we follow the advice that people share. We've spent a long time on our foundations, like a long time. These foundations are really good. The color ramps are just insane. The stuff we've done with transparency was next level, but no one really gives a shit. Why? We've done all the right things. So why does it feel like we're failing? Why is it that when you speak to so many people at whatever scale, this is probably not the first time they've tried to make a design system? It's probably not the first person in the organization at the moment trying independently to make a design system. So why do we keep ending up here? Not just as individuals, but companies of any scale. And what you tend to hear about is a lot of the really big scale stuff. Underneath those really, really big companies are everyone else, who could be at a startup, could be at a relatively small company, or a moderate-sized company doing quite well with a reasonable-sized product. Why are we getting it wrong then? It seems like we should be able to figure this out. There was some really insightful stuff from people sat here, which is gold. It was really good stuff. But still, we haven't solved it. I obviously lied. It's not about components. They don't really matter at all. They're a byproduct of doing the actual work. But no one really tells you that. Components are a byproduct. They aren't the work. So neither is it about tokens. They can be the most powerful thing in the world when you get them right. When you've got the scale and the structure and you're doing multi-brand stuff and you're doing this insane things that you never thought were possible, then it's about tokens. But that's not the work yet. fundamentally, when you're really reductionist, I am a fan of being really reductionist, they're all people problems. All of these things, we focus on the craft. Whatever background we had, that's our comfortable place. That's what we know. So when we start thinking, like, we really should have a design system that would give us all these benefits, it might, but you'll start with what you know. You'll crack up in Figma and you go, yeah, we can make things better, couldn't we? Hey, you designer, work with me. We'll make some components and it'll make the world better. And that's the problem. It's either for me, not for you. People are doing a really, really great job of sharing what they know. This is not at all disparaging for people sharing stuff, but there's a lot of content around this is how you use Figma to make a design system. If that were the case, we wouldn't need events like this. We'd have nailed it day one. Crack open Figma, here's some components, we've solved it. It's done, but it's not a solved problem. So hence the title of the talk. A little while ago, I was a design advocate at Zero Height. And what I loved about that job was I spent so long just listening to people's stories. And there's a lot of time where people say, oh yeah, so I work at this kind of company and we're doing this. Sometimes the story sounds similar, but there's always a twist to the tale. A lot of the time, these things kind of started organically as well, just like that. Oh, I was a designer and it felt like we needed a design system, so we tried to get one going. And then you find out it's not about components. And then you find yourself in a world of pain of, how do I persuade my senior people that they need a design system? How do I talk to QAs? I've not done that before, I don't know what they do. So the common thing would be adoption. I'm full of cold, sorry. If you are someone who's approached the design system from, I'm a designer, I'm comfortable with my tooling, I'm going to make some components and we will change the world, this comes too late. You've already done the thing, and now your job is purely a sales job. You're trying to turn around to people and saying, I've got the answer, please, will someone use it? And it's too late. It's come way too late in the process. But we didn't know any better because we were scratching our own itch. We were trying to solve a problem in a way that we're comfortable with solving it. But now you're on the back foot. You've got a solution, and now you have to convince the world that this is somehow the right thing to do. And the same goes for contribution. If you are lucky enough, you're fortunate enough where you get to the point where a number of people are using this, a number of product teams are using it, how do you convince them to now be a part of it and say, oh, that thing you made, that's really cool, yeah, bring it in. Or we would welcome any changes you want to make. Just, this is how we can go about doing it. How do you persuade someone to go above and beyond and do that? And I think it was Amy Hoop, who I noticed in the talk, was saying this is an act of altruism. Really, in a product team, you've got your commitments. You've got your backlog that goes on forever. You've got deadlines. And then someone's like, oh, you know, on top of that, could you do this as well? Why on earth would you do that? And you do that because you see the benefit, you see the cycle of, if you contribute this little bit, everyone gets a lot. But that doesn't resonate at first. So you can say, yeah, you can be a part of this. Come on board, I've got the solution. But it's too late. They weren't involved. It doesn't get much more people-based than when you talk about governance. You ever tried to get a room full of people to agree on anything? I mean, that's fundamentally setting up for failure from the beginning. And now you're saying, okay, well, how do we make decisions about this going forward? We've got designers, cool. Designers, let's all agree on something. That's not going to happen. Engineers, right. Oh, shit. And now you try and bring them all together. That wasn't really swearing. And now you try and get them all together and go, how do we make a decision about the system when it impacts all of these disciplines? Everyone is impacted. You're not going to get decision-making made easy, so it doesn't get much more human than that. All people problems, all without opening Figma. I love Figma, but you don't need to open it to make a design system. Fundamentally, we haven't really solved the problem. You've made a thing, but why should anyone else care? You're in the bubble. You really love design systems. You love product design. Why should anyone else care? Yeah, placeholder benefits, because we know what they are. We know that we get consistency, we get scalability, we get that stuff. We've probably said it 100 times each. Oh, why don't you care as much as I do? We'll be more consistent. So, who else thinks that's a problem within your company? You're going like, I've got 2 minutes to the CEO's time. CEO, we could be more consistent. Why are you looking at me like that? It doesn't resonate because you're not at all speaking their language, which is what was said earlier. But again, if you're trying to sell it, you're selling it on your terms. If you're saying consistency and stuff, no one else cares. That's a byproduct. And it's kind of talked about in the panel earlier, so thanks for stealing all my material. But when you think about value, whose value? What do they value? You're going to get more than one answer. You're going to get so many answers about what value actually is, to what stakeholders. It's a very, very mixed bag. So when you attribute value to it, it's not just, oh, it would be more valuable to us if we're more consistent. Why? What value does that have? If they're speaking to the head of product, what's valuable to them is exactly what folks were saying earlier. They want to ship things quicker. They want it more predictable. They want to get stuff out the door. They're responsible for it. So we do a terrible job of talking in other people's language about value. So why should they care? Fundamentally, I think there's a big problem where, because all of the advice that we see from other people is like, yeah, well, scalable, consistency. I'm not going to say consistency again. I'm fed up with that word now. What we don't hear about is do your research. Find out what your problems are. That's the root of your design system. Design systems are only about components later on. If you have a problem as a company, maybe the design system is part of the solution. But you have to understand what your problems are. One of the unique things that we get as design system people is, as we start to question things and start to research, we largely get a unique view of the place that we work. Maybe no one's really prodded around and asked these questions before. Certainly not as a designer, because you've got enough to work on. So start a bit at a time going, we now see all of these departments, we see the structures, we have a sense of the internal culture, we have all of this stuff that maybe no one else has seen. So we've got a unique insight. It's what I tend to say to people all the time, actually, in the pub, over meals. Take those design system benefits and turn them the other way. I'm really great company when it comes to design systems. All right, so if consistency is a benefit, flip it on its head. Why aren't you consistent? I mean, it's not a hard question. But when you start asking and you start working out, well, why is it we're not lining up? Why aren't we doing that? That's the problem. That's something you can start to anchor your design system in. Same as why aren't we scalable? Why aren't we doing things as fast as we could? Those start to unearth the actual problems. So you don't need to talk about these prospective benefits. You start to go, you've got a point, this is slow. No one's having a good time. So operationally, you can start your design system by going, can we make that a bit better? Maybe that involves components, maybe it doesn't. And I think when we look at all the content, all the really, really good stuff that people share, and it tends to be a lot of the really big companies that do the sharing, which is awesome. I will not take anything away from any of it, but your design system might not look like theirs. We know that scale is a massively different thing. If you're a single designer on a startup, you should not be making eBay. You're not going to be making a design system like that. Yours might have 10 really good components that are really well used. That is not public facing. That's so cool. You have solved a problem. And that's where the joy is. Like, you've actually solved a problem. And so to kind of elaborate on another point, it's not one thing. And so You can run it like a product if you have a sense internally of, we run products like this. But like Louise said, there is a service level, but you're providing infrastructure. You're underpinning all of your digital products. That is a seismic shift. It's not a nice to have. It's like you were saying as well, it's like if you bake it into the process, it's infrastructure. It's a layer underneath the products. So it's all of these things, and you can probably find more definitions than that. So it's far from being one thing. I really wish I had my font. So what we find ourselves is, when it's grown organically, we're suddenly in this place where we're way outside our comfort zone. We love our craft, we love what we're doing, and we're trying to solve some problems. So all of a sudden we're like, oh, I'm doing a lot of stuff that isn't that. I'm selling, I am educating, I am doing a lot of talking and listening and all this stuff. I'm spending so little time on my tools, where I'm happy, where I'm safe and I'm comfortable. Why am I now trying to make a case to talk to heads of department and stuff like that? Why am I now trying to sell? I just wanted to do some good work. Why am I now thinking, these processes could be improving a little bit? That's not what I did this for. I didn't get into making a design system to try and fix your processes. But that's the work. This stuff makes making components worthwhile. So if you fix the process and you know how you can get stuff out, then you can make something. Otherwise, you've got 100 components that no one cares about. They've got a token structure which is theoretically perfect, but it's not used in production. No one cares. So unless we can get something of value out, it doesn't matter what the something is. But fixing that operational stuff, the process of how are you going to do stuff, that's what matters. All of a sudden you're having conversations with product people going, I don't know what you do. This is important, isn't it? How do you say that this design system thing is as important as running another A/B test on a button to make another million? Don't know. We find ourselves thinking about community and different forms of communication and how do we create feedback loops? How do we not just broadcast but try and listen? I wasn't taught how to do that. I don't know. So we're looking at all these extra skill sets, let alone accountancy. And we're feeling like the bit of the job, why we started doing this, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Oh, by the way, new people might start, and you might have to help new product teams get on board with a design system. You might have to keep telling people what a design system is and how to use it again and again and again and again. Who's going to do that? It takes time. Someone has to. All of this is the work. Who else signed up to do all of that? I didn't. But now it's my job, and I actually love all that. But at the beginning, it felt like that commitment to solving a problem gets you in these weird spaces of doing stuff you really didn't imagine yourself doing. And so if you came into it from a design or engineering point of view, all of a sudden you're doing very little of that. I didn't sign up for that. What we can do to get some degree of success is basing it on real problems, not the hypothetical benefits. Literally no one outside of design cares about consistency. They know if it's wrong. They'll tell you if this is just weird. But it's not, being just a bit weird is not a business challenge. By understanding the different types of value, we can stop talking about the proposed benefits and say, this thing you care about, yeah, we care about that too. We're coming at it from a different angle, but we can agree that is valuable, whether it's financial or anything else. Like, well, yeah, if a company doesn't make money, I don't have a job. Yeah, I care about that. And one of the things around it all is that everyone's story is different. Everyone's context is different. And it's fundamentally because it's all about people. So not just those people around you, but the qualities that people bring, especially en masse, when you have structures and cultures and subcultures. And so if you say, well, perhaps you have a design team that's quite close, they innately will have a culture of how they work, how they communicate, and how they read each other. If you have a distributed team or many design teams, that will be difficult because everyone will have a slightly different culture, a different way of communicating. This stuff is really hard. It just is. But the good news is you do all of that, then you get to do this. That's it. Oh, it's the old version.
Sorry. Take a seat.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Not for signing up for that. Do we have any immediate comments, questions? We have a microphone ready as well, I believe. Any comments or questions for Dan?
What photo did you choose?
A Museo slab.
So that's the one we didn't get to see. Picture it. Oh, that's
it's
a nice
chunky
font. That's a really nice font.
Yeah.
Wish you had that. Any comments on this? Anyone feel familiar? Is this the whole stuff? I think we talked about this. Well, you definitely do, because you were asking the question earlier. So you nodding. I 100% agree. So we've done therapist.
Yeah.
Now we're an operations manager as well.
Yeah.
People structure. I think it's really interesting because I actually had this conversation with somebody at my company just the other day, where you're basically realizing that quite often as designers, and especially around design system, you're actually not solving a design problem. You're solving an operational problem in an organization, or a people problem, as you say as well. And I think, I don't know in your experience, I think the way that design system or the way that design is handled or how they tackle these operational problems often depends, and I think someone alerted to this earlier, where does design sit within an organization? Now I'm taking this operational, and I'm going for the operational part. So, whether it sits with brand, or whether it's digital, or whether it sits with engineering, tech, depending on where design is associated with, it's actually a very different approach and how people look at that. What's in your experience?
I think there's another thing related to that as well, where speaking to some people in really, really large organizations, they already might have design ops, research ops, content ops even, and all these things. So formalizing operational roles is a thing. But for the rest of us, it isn't. But those functions are still needed. We just don't have the capacity to go, oh, we need one of those.
Yeah.
Having someone do design ops changes things. But you wouldn't know, because unless you've had that role before or identified that need, why would you?
So how do we get that happening when we come in? We're here to get design system going, and all of a sudden we need to introduce design ops.
Yeah, but I think it's recognizing that that function exists. However you do it, whether you take it on yourself or you agree that as a collective, that's a problem. That's a function that we need. And either you can spread it across yourselves, there's different responses, but recognizing first of all there is a function that you don't have a response to.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you have anyone that's new to the design system and seeing this and thinking, definitely not signing up.
Run away.
I was about to ask, what's your advice? And I was hoping that it wasn't run away.
No.
So how do I'm new to design system, I'm thinking I really want to introduce this to my organization, and all of a sudden you're telling me that I can't even open Figma because I need to learn all of these new skills, including accounting. That
accounting one's going to scar me now. I think it's about balance, because at the end of the day, especially if you're in a smaller company, there might just be you or a few of you, and that's all you've got to work with. But so you need to spend some time in the tooling and get comfortable. How are you going to do this in the right way? So there's definitely an argument for doing some of that. But then having curiosity is just the other massive skill. Speak to people you've never spoken to. Ask questions you've never asked. Go why do we do that? Sorry, what do you do? And just, you can start mapping it out. And so my favorite thing about FigJam is Post-its, those sticky notes. Keep it super lo-fi and just be like, that's my current understanding. Someone can come along and go, oh, that's not right. Cool, it's moved. How is it? Tell me. And then starting with hardly any notes at all, you can start to have those conversations one-on-one, start to get, this is how the world is. It doesn't have to be really high effort.
Excellent. I obviously love that, because as I said earlier, I think when you start this journey, you need to ensure that you talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people that you talk to are going to be outside that immediate type of people that they come to and say, speak to these 5 people, they are important, and then where are the other 10 that you haven't thought about?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I think going along with that, it's the people that always get left out are test engineers or QAs. They're the gatekeepers of quality, right? Everything goes by them. So whose life can you make better from the design system? It's going to be them. They're going to be the ones who are going, this is the best way we can make it efficient. And what I found is when you get to test automation and that kind of level of granularity, if you don't have to test the same thing again and again and again because you can rely on it, you've made their lives a hell of a lot easier, which makes it more efficient.
And you might not talk to them, you might talk to them now and you might not speak to them again for a long time, but when you least expect it, that person is going to pop up. And because you remember to include them in the initial conversation, they're going to be the person who opens something for you further down the line. That's my strong belief. I think that's very, very true.
Completely agree.
Do we have any other comments, questions for Dan?
Any rotten fruit?
Is that rotten fruit over here? No, sorry. Go for it.
I'm back with another question for
a
different person. Thank you, Dan. A lot of this resonated throughout my career, but my question is, when you are working on a design system, you're obviously exposed to a lot of parts of the business that you might not have previously, and you do find operational inefficiencies, and you're like, oh my God, this is why is brand doing it this way? Why is it so old school? Do you ever find you get yourself in too deep that you're not solving a design system problem anymore? And
every single time.
And how do you retract from that, or do you not? Do you just run and go solve that problem?
It's different every time, but I think sometimes it's laying it out and going, I've found these problems. That might be the first time people have seen them, and so sharing it and giving them visibility is really important because they're not all yours to solve just because you found them. But you can say, I've done a bit of digging, look what I found. And for a lot of people, that might be even shocking. I had no idea it was like that. And in no way are you taking responsibility for that point. You're saying, I've done this first bit of discovery, I'm just looking for stuff. From that, I feel these things might be things we can tackle, but you still laid it out for everyone else to see. And you're not claiming ownership of it. You're saying, I've done some digging, I wanted to learn what we could do, and this is what I'm hearing. If anyone else wants to act on it, that's really cool. We should absolutely do that together. And maybe you can just inform it and be part of that journey. But you're opening it up, you're inviting people in, and then maybe you can go, it's realistic to look at that one.
Thank you.
That's good. Anyone else? No?
It's getting late.
It's getting, yeah. Okay, one last over here.
Just a quick one, because what it sounds like, what you're describing is a lot like service design.
Yeah.
So do you think there's a sort of parallel there between the sort of design ops and actually designing a service for an organisation?
I think when you get to the point of confidence, then absolutely. But I think sometimes being really rough and ready and just going I have no idea what I'm doing, but that sounds interesting. That links to what that guy was saying. I think there's different modes and different levels of maturity. So there's absolutely a stage where I've seen service design be really important. Not least because then everyone can point to the same thing and go, oh, that's what we're doing. And I think that visibility thing of managing expectations by going, we can point to that. Everyone can point to that. We can see what the expectations are and how this is going to work. So yeah, I think as well, when you look at contributions, how you might handle bugs or anything like that, which often gets forgotten about, these different ways of having the service layer. So if you get a contribution, what's your response to it? Do you say, yay, to everything, or do you triage and then have a process? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There is definitely a connection between service design, design ops. I actually went to a design ops conference last couple of weeks ago, and where design system was very present, and I think there's a lot of overlap. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's all we have time for. So thank you so much. Appreciate that.
No worries.
I'll see you at the window later. That's my... Oh, that's yes. Thank you. All right. So I know you're all eager to go, but before we go, we have a couple of things. Let me say, I need my glasses and my phone. Sorry, it's not very well planned because I'm blind without them. So first of all, I'm going to do some thank yous. But before I do that, normally we do this as a Oprah moment when I tell people, look under your seat. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to use my magic random generator, and I'm going to pull out 2 names. And there's going to be a surprise I know that the excitement level just went up enormously because you're like, oh my God, have I just won something amazing? Or am I about to? But let me just magically press on the buttons here. Well, they might not even be here, so it might have to be a few times. But let's start off with Aled Pritchard. Still here? Brilliant. Oh, the man himself. Fantastic. Oh God, sorry. Give me 1 second. Oh, old person. And then we also have one more. Richard Bassett. Do we have Richard Bassett still here? No? Okay. You snooze, you lose. You leave, you lose. Then we got Georgia Sutherland. Georgia Sutherland. Okay, so both of you, please come up on stage. I've got some small surprise goodie bags. I told you. Woo! Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you to you. Very, very kind. Thank you. No expenses spared at this meetup. Yeah, I know. This is what's going to make you all come back next time because you're thinking, I need to get my hands on that goodie bag. You don't even know what's in it. Yeah, exactly. So on that note, I want to say a huge thank you to Sainsbury's for allowing us to be here today. Fantastic. Obviously, I need to say thank you to YLD, but not just YLD. Actually, I want to say thank you to the team at YLD, the event team, Christine, Lauren, Victoria, some of you have spoken to, and anyone else who are helping out this evening and for making this event happen. Thank you so much. Don't worry, it's not going to go longer than the Oscars, but I'm working on it. And then I also want to thank the speakers, Dan and Molly. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. I only got one left. Don't worry, it's all good. And then obviously, finally, I want to say thank you to Benny, Rashman, John for the panel. Thank you. That was fantastic. Really appreciate that. And then as a last final one, I want to say thank you to the community and to you guys for joining us here this evening. Please, if you are hanging around, we'll be out there to continue conversations. If you have questions, discussions, don't be shy. We'll be here for a while. And otherwise, thank you so much. That is it. Have I forgotten anything before? No? Excellent. I'm getting the confirmation that I've done well. So, yes. So we are obviously looking for interesting projects and talents. If anyone wants to talk to us, please do that. If you feel, as I said before, I want to talk at the next DSL, come up and chat to me. I've already had someone which I'm excited about. And if you want to host an event in the future, also come up and chat to us. Otherwise, thank you and good evening.
When you're in doubt and when you're in danger, just take a good look around.